Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. I'm joined today by Elliot Turner, Head of Sports Science at Solihull Moors. Elliot, thanks for coming on.
No problem, Ben. No problem. Thanks for reaching out, pal. I'm looking forward to being a part of your podcast.
No problem, mate. How's things going with you?
Yeah, all good. All good. It's been a hectic year, like it has for everybody in every industry. But obviously, with us in football, we've been all the way through. Obviously, luckily, and obviously, I'm very grateful for that. That I've been able to go to work, like, and some people haven't. But being able to go to work every day, being out on the training pitch, doing what I love doing, has been really good for us during this pandemic. But yeah, from a football side of things, it's been hectic. Plenty of games, plenty of moments in the season that have not really happened before. With it being the hectic game schedule and the condensed season. But yeah, a bit of uncertainty as well during our league, whether we were going to continue playing or not, especially in the National League. So it was, there's been some times in this year that's been quite testing, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully it's set by itself and we won't see the repeat of a lot of the stuff that's gone on this season, but who knows what's going to go on.
No,
but,
I hope so, mate. I hope so.
I was just saying to you before we started recording that since I did the episode with Jake Simpson, who's at Hartlepool, a few people have got in touch asking about practitioners working in leagues like the National League. So that's why I wanted to reach out to yourself and get yourself on to discuss some of the approaches that you take. So we're going to dive into some of that in a little bit. But do you want to just take us into your journey so far? So your career, your background, what led you up to your role now?
Yeah, no problem. So for me, I've been involved, I'm 27 now. I've been involved in football from like an elite level probably since the age of 6 years of age. I was actually pre-contracted at Wolverhampton Wanderers from the age of 6. So I was still playing like Sunday football with my old man's team. So we set up a team, but I was pre-contracted to Wolves. So then for when I started at under-9s, when the actual games program starts going through the academy levels, then I was contracted to Wolves. And at the time it was quite a young age to be in that environment. There was quite a lot of restrictions still at like even 6, 7, like no school football. No, I was just about got to play with my Sunday team. But yeah, so it was brilliant. So I was at Wolves from the age of 6 up until 16, all the way through. Was really, really good, great experience. Been across the world, I've been playing tournaments. Then it got to my scholarship age where I didn't get a scholarship. And would I say it was surprising? I was probably shocked by it just from how I was at the football club. So from every age group, I was kind of like captain of the football club. In my age group, I was taken out of school to train with the first team, with the reserve squad at like 15, 16, and then in the Premier League at the time. And me being a Wolverhampton boy, it was like fantastic training. We've got some first team players who were going watching on Saturday with my dad and season ticket. It was like, you go to school, you tell your friends like, yeah, I've been training with this. It's like really, really good. And so I'm not saying I was thinking I was definitely destined to play for Wolverhampton Wanderers, but it was more the fact of like I thought I was doing quite well. They obviously sat me down. I didn't get a contract, so it was a bit of a kick in the teeth, really. But it was one of those ones where I was always I've always been brought up to be quite mentally strong. So kind of like the next day, Doncaster Rovers rang me and said, can you come up for a trial? Ipswich rang me, can you come for a trial? And Shrewsbury rang me, can you go for a trial? And I was like, well, I can't like rest on it. I've got to go and try and still chase my dream of being a professional footballer. So yeah, I went to Doncaster. They wanted to sign me there. Then I said I've got a few options still that I wanted to go. Then I actually went to Shrewsbury to play a game for the under-18s on a Saturday. I remember we were playing Carlisle. And I was only 15 at the time. And for myself personally, obviously working in football now, you can see like how people progress physically. So like from a 15, 16-year-old boy, I was still probably going through my adolescence. I hadn't really started as such. I was quite a late developer. So I was going to play 18s football. And like I turned up and I was like, what is going on here? People have beards and everything. Like every session is changing. I didn't have a clue what was going on, mate. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, and I knew some of the boys there. I went to school with some of the boys and played with some of the boys previously at Shrewsbury. And it probably wasn't one of the clubs that I actually wanted to go to. In all fairness, that's no disrespect to you because I had a great time there. But I played, and it was superb. And Dave Hughes, the head of the under-18s at the time, he'd been at Wales. He's at Southampton. He was at Southampton. He's back at Cardiff City now as like head of the academy. He actually said to me, "I can't promise you'll get a professional contract here, but I can promise you that I'll make you a better footballer." And all the years of coaching that I had at Wolves for 10 years, no one actually ever said that to me. Even though it was a great setup, no one ever said, "I'm going to make you a better footballer." So for me, it was like, I've got to try and be the best I can be. And if this guy's going to really sit down and try and help me and coach me for 2 years to try and be the best player I can be, then I'll take that. Like, it was superb. So yeah, I signed there for 2 years scholarship and signed a professional deal there in the end. Myself and Ryan Woods, who's now at he was at Brentford. He's at Millwall now. We were the two that got professional contracts there. So it was a great time. I was under Graham Turner there. It was a bit of a legend in the game, working with Aston Villa and won the European Cup there. But it was didn't really get a chance. If I'm honest, the young players didn't really get a chance under him. I left there and had a good time on loan at Tamworth in the conference, and which is the National League that I'm in now. And I didn't get a contract extension. So I kind of left there, went back to Tamworth. I was playing a bit of part-time football, but in my last year, the pro contract year at my Shrewsbury, I actually started an online university open course for doing sports and exercise science. Just because I was really interested in it. In terms of when I was at Wolverhampton Wanderers, the head of sports science there for the academy was a guy called John Iger. He's been Huddersfield. He was at England and that as well, I think, previously. And it was kind of all coming into it. All the GPS and the heart rate stuff was kind of coming into it. All the gym program. They had a brand new gym at the Compton training facility at Wolverhampton Wanderers, and it was like, this is something really interesting. It's different from coaching, so something different really like made my kind of brain tick and say, well, if I have a career, so I'm 35, 36, I'd love to go into this and still be in part of football. So I did an online degree for a year while I was still coming to the end of my time at Shrewsbury. And then when I went back into part-time football, I ended up finishing 2 years at Worcester University, finishing my degree up there. And then it was kind of my last year at Worcester University. I got asked to go into Worcester Warriors. So this is where like I kind of started to become in the role that I do now. So I did an internship at Worcester Warriors, and they offered me a place there. They were impressed with how I was as an individual, how I was quite into the sport, even though rugby wasn't my background, but it was, I really got into the sport. And I suppose from being in a football background and being in a change room environment, I wasn't scared to go and speak to people. I wasn't scared to go and ask people questions or have a conversation with players, or having one-to-one sessions with the players in any kind of manner, whether it's just sitting down, going through data, sitting down, going through a gym plan, sitting down, talking about a game. Like, it's just being that person, having that personality and being out there. I think from an intern point of view, they were quite impressed. So they offered me a role there. So I actually went into an elite environment straight away, like Premiership rugby. And it was actually a guy, my first day that I was there, the guy called Donica O'Callaghan. So in rugby, he's like an absolute legend. And I've rocked up into Worcester Warriors training ground at the stadium. And I'm sitting there waiting for Carl Goggin. He was the head of sports science there when I was there, and he's now working for the EIS. So I was waiting for him upstairs and like where they're having breakfast. And this Donica's like, I didn't know at the time. He's like, "Oh, do you want a drink or do you want any breakfast?" And I'm just like, "Nah, I'm okay, mate." He's like 6'9", he's like massive. So I'm like, I'm cracking myself thinking, just don't say anything bad. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll get you a drink." So made me like a bacon sandwich, and I'm thinking like, who's this guy like? And then Carl Goggin comes up and he's like, "You got your feet under the table early, haven't you?" And I'm like, I didn't ask for it. And he said, "Do you know him?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know him. I don't know anything about rugby." And he was like, "Oh, he's played like over 100 times for Ireland and captained the Lions squad." And I just thought, like, straight away, the environment being there was like, the guy's like an absolute rugby legend, and he's just made an intern a bacon sandwich. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, one, I shouldn't even be having a bacon sandwich because it's not great. Them guys eat anything. But yeah, so that was like a real big insight for me, the environment of what I've got to go be into. And then kind of they wanted to keep me on there as in my role that I was doing there, assisting Kyle. But from a financial point of view, it was quite tough. I know there's a lot of conversations in the last few years, obviously being in my role, that I see on Twitter, see on Instagram, people talking about salaries and stuff like that. And it was, for me, I was putting in getting in at 5 a.m. there and then finishing at 4. And I was hardly earning a penny. Do you know what I mean? And it's not about money at that time, it's about experience. But because I went to university quite late and came out of my role quite late to playing football, it was, I need to start earning a bit of a salary now. So I kind of turned down the job just because I thought I want to try and get back into football, and I wanted to try and obviously start earning a bit more money in terms of to financially support myself. So I got in touch with my old physio, who was head of medical at the time at Shrewsbury, Chris Skit. I think he's back at Burnley now, back in the game at Burnley. I just rang him up and said, Skitty, can I come down and shadow whoever's there in terms of sports science? Obviously, I know that you're there as head of medical. Obviously, I want to try and just learn as much as I can, because I was still learning. It was my first year in that role, in that environment. So yeah, said no problem, came down. So we went down into pre-season time, just before pre-season, and the guy himself, under the previous manager, he kind of left within a day of being there. So he handed his notice in and left, and so I kind of went in as shadowing to then going in doing the role. So in life, you need a bit of luck. And I went there, and it was just right, you got to start planning pre-season. I'm like, what? Hang on. I've only come in to shadow, and then I'm just straight in pre-season, straight in planning this, planning that. So it was again, throwing at the deep end. So obviously being at Worcester Warriors Elite Premiership Rugby, and then now at Shrewsbury, back at the club that I went and played for, it was a big thing. And to be fair, the season we did do really well. Obviously, we got to the playoff final, and we got to St John's Paint Trophy final as well. So it was a great season for myself and great learning curve. Paulhurst left and went to Ipswich. Skitty actually left and went to Ipswich as well, and then they all kind of brought a new management team in football. Obviously, people bring their own men in. So I left, and actually this is when I first dipped into being into non-league. So I went to Kidderminster Harriers, who were in the Conference North. And for me, it was a club that went down. The ambition, the training ground was superb. The ambition of what they wanted to do, plans-wise, they were full-time. So for me, being in a full-time environment, I'm always going to be learning. I actually went and signed there, obviously, to be the sports scientist and strength and conditioning coach, but they had no gym, they had no GPS or anything in place, and it was well, what am I actually going to do here other than take warm-ups, you know what I mean, and potentially provide some nutrition information for players. So I got in touch with Birmingham City University. We kind of created a partnership there and got some live data in, being able to use some testing equipment, because these guys I've gone from Shrewsbury, who've had a brand new training ground, brand new training facility, to go into Kidderminster Harriers, which I'm so much grateful for, because they gave me an opportunity to go and work and really implement my philosophy and learn. But that I had to start from scratch. So getting a GPS system involved, trying to help with training loads. I've gone trying to work out training loads in my environment here, to then go in here, just going out and playing. No thought on training, no planning on training. So the chairman at the time, Colin Gordon, he asked me to go in and said, right, it's a blank canvas, just go, and we want to try and have a high performance environment where we can try and get league players to come down to be at this football club, because we want to try and push on, because it's a big football club, Kidderminster, so the fan base are a bit grey, and they don't deserve to be where they're at. They actually deserve to be higher up the pyramid, especially with the infrastructure they've got. So that was my first part of going into non-league, with nothing. So obviously trying to then get a buy-in, which I think personally is a massive trait for people in my role. You have to have a buy-in from players. Yeah. And I think it was in the non-league environments, it was some weren't really wanting to do it, but then others were I really want to do this, because it was something new to them. They'd never done a gym program before. They'd never used a GPS monitor. They were all looking at the iPad on the first day of pre-season, how much have I ran, and because I'd never had it previously for a few years. So for me, that sense of buy-in was brilliant straight away, because it was, no one had ever seen it before. So whatever I was saying, it was kind of like what goes.
Yeah.
No one was questioning what was being said because they hadn't had anybody in that role previously. So it was I was spent 2 years there. It was a really good time. Just worked under some real good managers, Neil McFarlane, who's at Brentford B now, doing a great job there. Learned so much off him. And then John Pemberton came in my second year, who's an ex-Premier League footballer. He's worked at Bristol City. He developed the likes of Harry Maguire through Sheffield United's academy, Carl Walker. So I've worked in the non-league environment with some actual real elite coaches and managers. And I think that's helped me real drive standards and drive that elite performance environment in any sector, whether that be tactical, technical, and obviously then with what I do in sports science and strength and conditioning. So it was real good to be working in non-league with two guys that have come from the top. Obviously, Neil McFarlane working with Coventry under Stephen Presley. It was brilliant to work with, and obviously John Pemberton with the career he's had and the standards that he sets to obviously want to be a player, and obviously to where he worked at Bristol City and Sheffield United. It was like, I've got to be on point. I've got to do everything I can. I can't go through the motions. I can't try this. I can't try that. It's got to be bob on all the time. So yeah, I came to my end of my time at Kidderminster Harriers just because I thought I needed a new challenge. And in the probably the last 9 weeks before the pandemic hit the first time, in terms of the first lockdown, Jimmy Shan, the old West Bromwich Albion manager, he was caretaker manager there, and obviously he was an assistant under Darren Moore, then took over for I think like 10, 11 games in the Championship and playoffs, semi-finals against Villa. He came in as a voluntary role just to get back coaching, because he left West Bromwich Albion on garden leave, and he came in as a voluntary role. I'd never met him previously. I'd heard about him do some real good work in their academy and all throughout the years, and obviously working with the first team, but I'd never met him. And he was there for 9 weeks, and when he left, he gave me a bit of a call and just said, listen, I've loved working with you. I love what you've done. I'm going to Solihull Moors. Do you fancy coming with me next year? So I was like, yeah, obviously it's a new challenge for me. Solihull Moors were and now I've been working there, a real up and coming National League club. They haven't got much history, but our owners are very ambitious and are backing the club very well. So kind of had the conversation with Jimmy, and yeah, I left Kidderminster House to go to Solihull Moors. So I went there this year. Obviously, it was we didn't know when we were going to be starting in terms of the season starting, or whether it was ever going to start again at some stage. So we had a lot of planning during the summer. At Solihull, we had a brand new training ground. And for me, it was again being a part of that planning has been really good. Obviously, still working in non-league, but planning a facility that the club want to go to League 2, League 1, and obviously the Championship if they want to. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got the capability in terms of the ambition and the financial backing. We can probably do that as a football club. Whether that's going to happen in this short period of time, whether it's going to take a long period of time, that they're in it for the long haul, which is a really good project to be a part of, and I wanted to be a part of. Chairman gave us a structure and was like, right, to me and the physio, like, you got to build a gym. So I was like, okay, so fantastic. We were building a brand new gym on site. Previously at Kidderminster, we had no gym. We were going to like the gym group as such. Like, we were working there with all the public there. When previously at Solihull Moors, before they were going to like a Virgin gym and just being around the public, and the chairman really wanted it to be on site. So we've got a brand new gym facility on site that's I designed with the physio this summer. So again, that's something in my role that I've done so far, in my recent experience and only being young in my career, I've actually designed and built a gym facility, which is quite good, and it's a great experience. And I think it's one of the things that like a head of performance or a director of performance would do at like a bigger club. They would be part of that. And I've never had a budget before. Like, I've been given a budget this year. It was like, okay, you got this on nutrition, you got this on strength and conditioning, you got this for the gym. So I'm like, well, I've never had any money before to spend or whatever. I have to do things on a budget, like not on a budget, but like as minimal as possible, like killing so I was buying my own nutrition supplements for the players. I was like, just because I thought it was the right thing to do. Like I wanted to implement that into the football club. So I'd go and get gels, I'd go and get hydration tablets, I'd go and get like caffeine gels or sweets for a game and beetroot juice and things like that, just to try and really implement and get a buy-in from the players. And I think that me doing that allowed them to really think that I was looking after them. And I wasn't doing it for that. I wasn't doing it for like a well done or a thumbs up. You're the best. You're that. I was doing it because I thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So this year, having a budget and having that, like, this is nutrition, this is sports science, this is your strength and conditioning budget, build the gym. It was superb, but it's obviously a new thing for me as well. And with the gym now, they've actually we've had 3 championship clubs see it online and through people we know at the football club who actually want to copy our gym. So it's even whether it's for their academy or whether it's for their first team. So it's again, that's nice to hear that people have come down and saw it, or people have seen it over social media, or I mean, some of our people on the board and technical directors, I know people working in the championship, and they said, "Oh, your gym facility is brilliant. Like, we got something on that training ground, whether it's for the under 18s and 23 separate to the first team, or something the first team can have on their site." So again, it's like a great experience and a bit of a, like, I suppose in a way, I'm very thankful for the club to give me the opportunity to do that, because it's like something in my role at 27 that I probably wouldn't been able to do yet as such, you know what I mean? So I'm very pleased with that. So yeah, obviously then that's where I am today. I do a bit of I also work with John Phillips. I think you spoke to John Phillips before. He's now at Krasnodar. So John, I actually met on holiday about 2 years ago in Dubai. I was on holiday with my missus, and he's just set up K3 Performance out there.
Yeah.
And I said to my missus, like, these guys, they're training all the footballers and that. Like, they must do something that I do, because it's not just technical. They're in the gym, they're doing whatever. I'm going to have a chat with them. So I went and chatted to them by the pool, and now I'm kind of like involved as such with K3 Performance. Like, I wanted to go and help. I said, listen, can I come and help out? Can I come and watch you work? And because he just left QPR at the time, and we both had a few people in common that we knew at QPR, so that kind of got the conversation going. Told him where I'm at, told him what I've been doing and stuff, and so yeah, I also do a bit with K3 Performance out in the Middle East at times when we can. The first year we did it, it was brilliant. So ended up going from watching him once, and then ended up like working there for work with him every day. The missus weren't very happy, but yeah, so I've got an holiday with her. I never saw her. So yeah, it was one of them. And just because I'm like, with myself being quite ambitious and young and wanting to improve, it was like, this is an opportunity. I'm working with Premier League footballers, Championship footballers, working with a guy who's had unbelievable experience and really well thought of in the game of sports science and strength conditioning. I've got to go and take this and that opportunity to develop and learn. And I think that's another trait as a practitioner, that you have to keep learning all the time. I think it's a massive thing that you can't just have your philosophy and that's it. There's either going to be new things that come along, or bits and pieces that you see that people are doing, or some coaches that have done with previous strength conditioning coaches or sports scientists at older clubs that you want to implement and think, yeah, that's actually quite good. So I think that the biggest thing for a practitioner is always learning, and that was an opportunity for me to keep learning. So again, I class him kind of as one of my mentors now. I speak to him all the time. I actually spoke to him the other day. He said he's not ignoring you, by the way. So he just said
everyone ignores you, mate. Don't worry about it.
He said to say hello. He's not ignoring you. But again, like, I'm always on the phone to him, trying to learn and just ask advice. So yeah, it's again something that's come early in my career to meet somebody of such well regarded in the game, to go and learn. I think is brilliant so far.
Brilliant. I think there's so many takeaways from your story for coaches to hear, but 2 stand out for me, big ones: networking and knowing people in the game. And you spoke a little bit about luck and going into clubs at certain times and obviously ending up in roles and stuff, but you have to be there at that time, don't you, to get those opportunities?
Of course, yeah.
I think
networking's massive.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, and that's what you spoke about right the way through. in terms of your background and the story so far is that that's essentially what you've done, isn't it? You've pulled on people that you've known, and you've seen if there's an opportunity there, and then maximize the opportunity. But also the thing we've spoke about a lot on the podcast, and this is where I hope a lot of younger practitioners listen, is that the opportunities in non-league or the lower leagues, you can really maximize those roles, can't you? And like you say, designing the gym, having a real impact with players, maybe going into a club that hasn't got a lot in place, having real impact at that level is something that you can do. And there's more and more clubs in need for it and wanting it right now, isn't there? So they're the big two that stand out for me, that people should listen to what you're saying and sort of try and relate it to their careers as well.
Yeah, I think that the roles, like, would I have gone down the role of going into an academy system in terms of working your way up from like a 9s to 16s, then to an 18s and 23s? That for me, that's a fantastic way of learning, because you're working in a really elite environment, and you're working with real big people who are thought of in the game to be top of their game as well. And you're going to build a real big base of that. But for me, going straight into a first team environment, it was, would I ever go back into academy? Yes, of course I would. I'd love to go into academy role with a huge football club, because again, I can learn. I'm part of a huge football club. But I'm actually really pleased that I've gone into non-league, and I'm pleased that I have been pushed into the deep end in terms of working at elite level straight away with Worcester and Shrewsbury, and then coming down now. I suppose this time coming back down to non-league. And by the way, luckily for me, the clubs I've been at in non-league are quite ambitious football clubs. They've all been full-time. They've not been part-time clubs where you see the players once or twice a week with a game, and you can implement something. I've actually been full-time, where I have a philosophy, I have a program in place that I can try and implement throughout the season. And also along the way, I suppose from a selfish point of view, being in non-league, I've learned a lot about myself, and learn a lot about developing my own philosophy and program, what things work and what things don't work.
Yeah.
And I think being in the non-league environment, it's kind of, I suppose, a blessing in a way. Like, I don't see it as I'm in non-league, like this is not good enough, or whatever. Like, the clubs I've been at are brilliant, and have been ambitious, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity that they've given me to help and develop. Because I think if I did this podcast 3 years ago, I wouldn't know what to say. If I'm honest, I wouldn't know, have a clue what to say. And now I could. Obviously, there's so many things that you obviously don't have in non-league, but how much I've developed as a practitioner, it's huge. So any young guys out there coming out of university, just go down to non-league, and whatever level it is, and go and graft, just go and do the work and try and implement the philosophy, and you'll get, if you work with whatever level you work at in non-league, if you maximize the potential of one player, you can do your job, and then you can go at a higher level and maximize 2, 3, 4, and you get to a time where you're working with a whole team, and you've got a buy-in from a whole team. I think there's a lot of young lads coming out of the game now that have been in academy systems at a high level, or league clubs at a high level at 18, 19, first year pros getting released and going into non-league. That they expect the information, they expect the professionalism, but then when they don't get it, it's like kind of throwing the dummies out of a pram. But if you can work with those players, and you know that they've been at that level and they've got that professionalism, they can help you drive your philosophy. They can help you drive that and really embed it into the people who are probably not so into it, or not so wanting to learn at an older age, or just had kind of, everyone says, that non-league mentality. Now, luckily, I've been at, like I said, clubs that haven't really had that non-league mentality. They want to be ambitious and go as far as they can in the football pyramid. And so they've had to recruit the players to match that. The players have matched that ambition and their professionalism. So alongside the managerial appointments, like I've said, it's been not just, listen, no disrespect to any non-league managers, they're all brilliant out there, what they do. But what I'm trying to say is the clubs that I've been at, who they've employed in the managerial role, that's actually shown the ambition and shown the drive of the professionalism and standards. So again, it's helped me, but then the players alongside that have helped everything go to a good position.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to say, because some of the names you've mentioned that are coaching at that level, whether it is on a voluntary basis, like you mentioned before, or dropping down to find an opportunity back in the Football League, players coming out of the higher levels, but also players at that level. And we all know good examples of players that have played at that level and gone on to the very top of the game that want that elite environment, don't they? So people working in that environment, and yes, resources, finances are going to come into it, but that doesn't mean that you can't operate in an elite way, does it? Like what you said about rugby, the rugby club before.
Yeah, of course, no, definitely. And I think that obviously being in non-league and obviously working in the league and obviously playing for a football league club at the time, it was the standard of footballer is probably not that much difference in my opinion. Obviously, you'll have the standout few, but I think now you see in the FA Cup ties that they're dealing with League One, League Two teams as in like a real good go, and you see more non-league teams now progressing. Obviously, Lincoln did a fantastic job of it a few years ago under the Cowley brothers, and I think that it was something that made non-league teams think that we can really have a go here. There's not much difference in between. If we can potentially financially back the club a little bit more, we've got more chance of going up and being in that football pyramid. Because at the end of the day, that's what every non-league football club wants to do. They want to hit that League Two status and kind of then get themselves up the pyramid again. But I think that the standard of player isn't that much different in terms of some superb players down in conference football National League football, whether that be the Premier or North and South. But I think that the levels of sometimes professionalism, like I've mentioned, and then also the levels of athleticism and physicality is what sees the top boys from the National League and those guys go and get those moves. Yes, they've been superbly tactically and technically during the seasons, but the guys that have moved on have also got that physical capability to go and work at that level of League One, League Two. So I do think there is a difference to a certain degree.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just going to jump to a question we got sent in because I put it out on our social media because I said to you before, we have people saying about after the episode with Jake. So a couple of things in terms of more the S&C side. So Owen Jackson's actually sent a question in saying, how do you, as an S&C or sports scientist, make sure that players don't overdo it in training, but also is interested to hear on the approach on the gym side of things where players are playing so many games or playing like 3 times a week?
Yeah. I think that for me, it's been, obviously this year has been crazy as we've spoken about with how condensed the season has been, how many games we've played. I think one of the stages this year, we played 7 away games on the bounce. We were Dover 1 week away. Then we were up to Hartlepool, playing against Jake's team. Then we were down to Bromley. Then we were up back to, it's been crazy. With 7 away games on the bounce. And I generally don't think that's ever happened to any football team at any level in any year of football. And I'm not making excuses at the time, but it was just like, we're away again. Like I spent more hours on the coach than I saw my missus those few weeks. It was crazy. So I think that going back to your question on players overdoing it was a case of at that time it was monitoring. So luckily for me, we had the live GPS system. So we're lucky enough. So I kind of used what I used at Kidderminster and then went back to Birmingham City University and said, right, I've moved to Solihull Moors. Obviously, I've had interns previously. We're using the equipment. We were giving you all the testing. You had all our data to go and do lectures with. Can I kind of rebuild that structure? Can I go and rebuild that relationship with yourself now at Solihull Moors? And obviously, with the pandemic, it's been a little bit difficult, but they've been great there at BCU, helping us with testing equipment, and they've obviously got the live data again. Because we started off the season with no live data. We just had the player unit. So again, for me, it was something that was foreign to me, not having the live data, and the planning really had to be on point, especially during pre-season. Your planning has to be on point in terms of your sessions that you do, log the sessions and then kind of break the sessions up in terms of what point, how much you were doing in each part of the session. So say I had a warm up, a technical, a possession, an 11v11 or a 5v5. I was having to really break that data down, like most coaches do for their planning. But in terms of, because we had no live data to see like how much of the warm up cover, how much of the technical cover, and then so if the manager the next day wanted to do something similar to that technical previously, I can go, right, okay, that technical we did 1K and that technical there. So I was having to kind of like add it up in my head before training to see what the actual load was going to be, because you can't obviously see what you've done during the session. So for me, it was a real big thing with, again, to match the ambition of the football club, to try and implement a real elite environment by trying to get live data in. Now, from a budget point of view, again, we still are non-league. Yes, the club are backing the staff and backing the team in terms of from a financial point of view, but there's obviously going to be a bar that you can't keep going over. Obviously, we had a brand new gym on site, so it was like, right, there's your little, that's your kind of money there. So you're not getting any money anywhere else, which is fine, which is perfect. Obviously, adaptability again is another trait in a practitioner that I think is massive. Being adaptable in certain areas and trying to make things work is a huge thing. So we've got the live data in. For me, it was superb for the physio and myself to have meetings every morning to discuss training loads, look at the recovery element of things, look at how much people are doing from an acute chronic point of view. And then we have had quite a few injuries this year. And obviously for myself, I kind of take it quite personal, because it's like, what can I do better to prevent these injuries happening? And every time someone went down with like a quad strain or a hamstring strain, even if it was like a grade 1 where it was 7 to 10 days, this season it's like 3 games. Yeah. Whereas normally it can be 1 game and the manager's like, yeah, okay, I can deal with it for 1 game. But then to be out for 3 games, maybe one of your main players, it's like, oh my God, like the pressure's on, the stress is on to 1, getting back, 2, again, make sure it doesn't happen. Yeah. So again, we implemented getting the Nord board in. We've got a groin bar in from Valve, and just really trying to make the environment elite. So we've got the gym on site with the live data, we've got match day +2 monitoring going on, to real see where the players are at basically physically. And obviously, I think in our roles, we can only advise. You can have as much of a say, you can have much as an argument, but at the end of the day, it doesn't come down to you who plays and who doesn't play. You can only advise in your role. So me and the physio produced data this year where we're like, okay, so-and-so struggling, or so-and-so maybe might need a rest. With how crazy the game schedules have been, but then again, the consistency of what the managers want in terms of the same 11 playing to build those playing relationships. It's difficult to go to the manager, he's not playing today, or he's not playing today, he's going to struggle, but then it's always a gamble, right? He's borderline red zone. Do you want him for 1 game, or do you want to miss him for 7 games? Just something like that. And it's so, that stuff there, we've had to real dig our feet in, I suppose, and go, right, okay, let's try and get a real good grasp of this. And then again, looking at the gym side of things, it's been difficult this year to get some real strengthening in players. I think when we've had a few muscular injuries this year. I mean, like I said, we've had a lot of injuries this year. A lot of them have been to key players, but they have been kind of contact injuries or knee injuries as such that, 1, potentially could come down to neuromuscular fatigue, or 2, down to just the game schedule. Obviously, when you have so many games, there's more contact, there's more time they're playing, there's more chance of them getting injured. But there has been a few muscle strains that we've looked at, and we've developed. Obviously, as we've developed a plan across the season with the schedule, we've limited those muscular strains now, which has been really good. But again, it's a learning curve for us. But previously with the gym work, we think that we spoke about it, with them being in lockdown, the players finishing in March, and then coming back into pre-season, or so you want to call it, in September. For us, that's a massive gap that there's been no strengthening work in there. Now, you can run as much as you want. You can go on 5K runs that a lot of players are doing, like timings and stuff there in competitions, 10K timings they were trying to do. But if you're not trained and you're not strong enough to deal with that load, to deal with going into high speed running and into sprinting, you're going to have an injury of some sort. And I was trying in the off season, I knew we were having a gym, I was trying to get the equipment as quick as I could to potentially send some stuff out to players to their homes, because I knew that it could potentially be a problem during the pre-season and during the season itself with the game schedule, that the lads are actually fit, but they're actually not strong enough to deal with the load. So you're always going to pick up those little niggles that are going to take players out for 7 to 10 days. So I think for me, going back to Owen's question, we looked at, obviously my philosophy, I'd do lowers and legs on a Tuesday and then upper body on a Thursday, just with the schedule we had. But with so many games on a Tuesday this year, the lads have hardly done any leg sessions. So we kind of introduced some isometric training on a Thursday. So when they were doing their upper body work, after their upper bodies, we introduced some isometric work. So we did some like calf holds, some split squat holds, Copenhagen's, hamstring bridges, just to try and get some muscle recruitment in there and try and get some strengthening into the players. Now we built it up from say 2 sets of 15 seconds to 2 sets of 20 seconds, then to add weight. We built up across the season, and we've actually managed to see a decrease in the muscular injuries, and whether that's players getting used to playing game after game after game and actually strengthening work, or whether it's actually taking effect, we don't know, but we're still implementing that, and I think it's something that I'll take into next season even more so, that when we still are Saturday to Saturday, I potentially would do your legs on your Tuesday, and then also your isometrics alongside, or some power work on a Thursday, just some light power work to get into the boys, to again make them more robust. So yeah, that's the answer to Owen's question, but I can't give him too much because we're playing him on Saturday.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, you can have a pitch side debate on that one. What'll be tomorrow? But no, what's the reason for the ISOs then?
Just to really grasp that strengthening element into the players and building that strength into there. So those holds and putting obviously there's no eccentric contraction there, so there's going to be no muscle damage as such. So yeah, people go, why are we doing, like when we first did it, the lads were like, why are we doing legs as such on a Thursday? And I'm like, it's not really a leg session. You're not going to cause any muscular damage. There's going to be no muscle soreness coming from isometrics. You are just literally trying to recruit muscle fibers in there with the holds. And obviously when we've added the weight, when we've obviously periodized it and we've added the weight throughout the season, it's been quite rewarding. But we've had 2 COVID breaks this year. So we've had the gym, then the gym got put on like 4 or 5 people allowed in the gym at a time. Then when you got a squad of 20 odd players, it's like every frigging 10, 15 minutes someone's having to do isometrics. By the last group, they don't want to do it. Do you know what I mean? So again, trying to get that buy-in. Then lads are coming in saying, "Oh, I'm sore." I'm like, you're not sore. You're just making it up. Do you know what I mean? Like you put on your wellness this morning. You're all good to go. Your readiness to train. Your muscle soreness is 1. So you either lie on your wellness, which we do for a reason, or you just don't want to do the isometric work. But again, we've seen a real good reward in it in terms of keep continuing doing that. But when we had the breaks from the COVID breaks that we've had in terms of isolations as a squad, when we've lost that 2-week break, whether it be from a running point of view, and you can send them runs to do, but it's not like you can never recreate the intensity of football. And then obviously with that, again, missing that block of 2 weeks for their isometric work, again, we picked up little 7 to 10 day injuries for a couple of players that, again, when you come back in from COVID, you got a backlog of fixtures and they've missed like 3 games. So again, we know that when a consistent basis of isometric work, we've seen this year that there's been a reduction in muscle injuries.
And if that's a key lesson for you going into next season, that you're going to try and keep that within the program, is there anything else that springs out for you as a main takeaway from this year that you might take into future seasons as well?
I think I've had a conversation with a few practitioners about this, and it's like what you've done. So maybe something you've implemented this year that hasn't worked, or maybe something you've implemented this year that has worked, sometimes doesn't really mean it's going to work next year.
Yeah.
Because the season is completely different. So try and take a bit of both and implement it next year and kind of see how you get on, but have obviously a plan behind it and organised periodisation behind it, because you might have done something this year that might not have been suited or fitted to the period of time for the season, but next year with that 7-day break sometimes between a game and a game,
hopefully
you can really implement a program. Well, hopefully, yeah, hopefully. For me, anyway, I don't think I'd do this job anymore if I could. It's been crazy. But yeah, so just so trying to implement something that's not different, but implement something that might have worked or might not work, and just have a good plan with it. I mean, I've come up with a plan this year that's something that I want to implement, things that I haven't been able to do because of the COVID restrictions. Like we've been doing analysis sessions outside, freezing. We've been doing analysis sessions sometimes just online. Like the manager's been sending a video that he's produced himself and sending it to the players in the WhatsApp group, so we're not contained together. Obviously, Jim's been really tough this year to do because of how many people in the gym. We've had like 3 or 4 gym groups at a time. Activation before training, again, has been a tough one. We've got a brand new super gym facility, and most of the season we haven't really been able to be in it as such. Yeah. But it's been very restricted. So then getting the groups of 6, 7 people at a time with masks on, trying to do the gym work, it has been tough. So next year, hopefully, we can really have a good program in terms of more activation, more core work, more power work, more plyometric work, because these are all things that I've wanted to do, but I haven't been able to implement. And I think that now we've got a real good element on monitoring. We've got a real good system for match day +2 monitoring as well after games to see how the guys are recovering. Really looking at obviously the isometric work that we've done, the wellness stuff that we do, and then adding in some little more bits and pieces that we want to do as a medical team. I think we can have a real good, strong elite environment. And I know I spoke to you previously, obviously before we started this, that we've had players in this year on loan from league clubs, Premier League clubs, Championship clubs that are young boys that are coming in, that what we're doing, they don't do it at their football clubs. And that's like no disrespect to their parent clubs, but it's like, for us, it's like, okay, well, brilliant. We're actually ahead of some football clubs, whether it be from a financial point of view or whether it be from an innovative point of view in terms of thinking on your feet. And I think that, like I said previously, having to work in non-league with nothing at all, to then having to produce these ideas, it's like my brain's always having to try and think of ways that we can try and be better, instead of having it all given to you and go, right, you can use that if you want to. Like stories of football clubs having cryotherapy chambers, 120 grand cryotherapy chambers, and there's like, they don't get used, they're not even turned on. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, that's just like something that I'd love to have, or something like that. I'd love to have the facilities to use that kind of stuff. Whereas like we're having to kind of be creative and trying to be adaptable to these situations. So I think that, again, the boys who come to us, they're really, again, they're brought into it because it's something new. Like they're not doing it at their parent clubs, they're not doing the game day +2 testing, they're not having the gym facility that we've got on site. Do you know what I mean? They've got they've got a few barbells here or some dumbbells there to do some work, which again I've got no problem with that because I've been there, I've had no equipment. But then like having to really build that elite environment now, and for them to come down and say, yeah, well, this is great, you're doing this here, this is superb, this is good, this is really good. It's like quite of a nice thing to hear when you've been down there with nothing. You've kind of created a bit of hopefully an elite environment to work in and to be a part of from a medical side of things.
Definitely. And my view on that is that I feel like practitioners have to do that. Like, even if you do end up in the Premier League, in the Championship, like at those top levels at clubs that have got loads of resources, you've referenced loads of times that, yes, you have had opportunities when you've had more resources, but you learn so much from having nothing. And that's where you create
so much more.
You create your philosophy, don't you? That's where you get your principles that you're trying to hit. I spoke to Damien Roden in the last podcast, and he was talking about going into different clubs, and he had his principles that he wanted to try and build on. And those principles are built from times where you go into clubs and you don't have that much. So that's I think people have to do that. And whether that's like a local club, even an amateur club, or whether it's a semi-professional club, there's so many opportunities out there to try and seek, isn't there, to try and take advantage of.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like even with the resources online now, in terms of your learning, in terms of your development from a scientific point of view, seeing what other practitioners are doing, because a lot of people are putting it out there, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some things you see, right, like that's like I don't know why they're doing that. Like that's what sometimes people think, or sometimes like that's superb. I might do a little bit of that. I might put that in there, but not copy it. But in terms of have your own thought process on that and how can that implement into your philosophy. And I think as a young practitioner, though, if anyone's listening to coming out of a university time where they're looking for a job and obviously haven't got any much experience, like I said, go and dip into non-league and listen to podcasts like this, what people are doing, and kind of somehow implement it in your own way. I think it's huge to go and do that. And there's nothing wrong with working in the non-league in terms of your experience and developing your philosophy. I think it's quite unique to have that because there's nobody there telling you what to do, and you haven't got to go by any like EPPP or anything like that, which obviously is superb. But we don't have that in that non-league, or London league teams don't have that you have to kind of abide by. You can kind of create your own philosophy by going and just putting the hard work into it, really. Yeah. And working with players, like I said before, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, that you can maximise their potential and really have that professionalism in football clubs. So I think a lot of non-league clubs now are trying to get that professionalism, whether it be, like I said, from players dropping down or managers going in there or new stadiums. So they are starting to realise now that the gap isn't that big. It's more of a professional side of things. How can we make the club more professional and do the best we can? So I think there'll be more roles coming up with non-league teams that are like graduate sports scientists, graduate S&C coaches. We need a bit of help here on the match day or a couple of days a week training sessions on a Tuesday and a Thursday night. Just go out there and go and do it and go and learn your trade in terms of create your own philosophy. And if you make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes, but again, you learn from those things. You learn from that adversity, and you have to adapt to it.
Brilliant. Mate, we've covered loads there. Some really good stuff, I think, and it covers a lot of the questions that we tend to get around working in non-league and the lower leagues as well. So I really appreciate that. But we'll go into some of the quick fire that we always finish the podcast with now. First one being, who are some of the biggest influences on your career so far?
I think probably, even though he doesn't know this and I don't really speak to him, seeing John Iger work from a young age and seeing what he does and what he did and trying to at Wolves in terms of that the brand new stuff with the gym work as a young academy player, then with the heart rate stuff and the GPS stuff, seeing that new environment, how he worked, really made me think, right, like I said to you previously, that if I had a career till I was 35, 36, this is what I want to go into. So I presume he's probably like a big influence on what I wanted to do. And then again, like I said, working and speaking to John Phillips, it's like I'm always asking how he got to where he's been and what he's done. And it's a real listening to him, how he's developed and how he's worked, and the timing of things. Timing's a massive thing. Like, obviously, I want to try and progress now and be at the top of the game that I can be, but I know that I've still got to learn my trade and still try and create my own philosophy and bide my time. I think that he's a big influence on my career so far in terms of having that having that mentor there. And I think that, again, like I said, if you can kind of get a mentor within the game, I think it does help.
Definitely. Next one, what would you say your biggest strength is as a practitioner?
I'd probably say me being out on the grass and being around the lads, and that's not from a pally point of view, but that's from all the clubs I've been at, whether it's gone back to Shrewsbury as a previous player, like having that buy-in, having that relationship with the players where they're not just gonna just take your work, take whatever you say, and just not do anything with it, or the advice you give them, like a pinch of salt. Like, I'm actually maximising players' like capabilities in terms of giving the information I'm giving them, they're actually interested in. And I think it's because I've been in their shoes previously that they understand where I'm coming from. And that buy-in as a practitioner and being out on the grass and being in the gym, obviously I think that those are my main strengths as a practitioner. And I think once you get that buy-in from players, it's a massive help to your role.
Definitely. Next one, what's the best CPD that you've done in recent times? Whether that's like, it might be courses, it might be podcasts, webinars, research you've read, articles, whatever. Like, what is there anything that you've done recently that you felt like you've wanted to implement in your practice, or that has had a big impact?
Yeah, I think when I obviously during the lockdown, there was a load of like online webinars that were brilliant to listen to. But it was actually a catapult event that I went to at Ellen Road, probably I'd say 4 or 5 months just before the lockdown happened. I went to Ellen Road, and there had loads of different practitioners on, and it was really refreshing to hear Tom Robinson speak, who's obviously head of sports science at Leeds. And how many managers he's had to work under at the time at the football club, because there was a spell where they had so many managers, and then his philosophy had to change, his planning had to change for each one. And then obviously there's massive hype now about how physically superbly prepared Leeds Football Club are. Well, I mean, we've had a boy this year come from Leeds under 23s and signed for us this year, so obviously stories that he said and how much the work goes into the club. And obviously hearing Tom speak about Bielsa and what his philosophy is. And I mean, we had a boy on who was an England player who played for Leeds, and like he'd been on international duty for England, and then on the playing the Tuesday night, then obviously there's like a day off tomorrow. He's like, no, I've got 11 tomorrow. And like, he was like, that was it. Like that was Bielsa's like, oh, we're doing 11 tomorrow. And everyone was like, you used to play 90 minutes. He said, no, but that's just how it is. We got to play. So it's like his philosophy on like work rate and workload. It was really, really interesting to see the insights of what I've probably classed now as one of the teams that everyone looks up to in terms of work rate and distance covered and sprint distance covered, that how they work and what they have to do in implementing their program. So yeah, that was a real good insight. Again, we had some other great practitioners talk. Chris Rush spoke.
Yeah.
And Dave Carolan spoke as well. So again, it was like some real good people on the course speaking, and learned a lot from what they said in terms of implementing different things into their football clubs and building that, like I said, buy-in and building that elite environment.
Brilliant. And then just finally, mate, same sort of question, but for a coach and then a player. What would you say is the most important trait? And I think you've sort of covered this so far, for a coach to be successful or to have impact with players.
I think there's a few things. I think being adaptable to different. Obviously, you're going to work with different managers. Different managers are going to want different things from you. I think being adaptable is huge. Then obviously, like I said, getting that buy-in from players, but dealing with that adversity. How do you deal with somebody who's not buying into your philosophy? How do you deal with somebody who's not going to go and do that extra pre-ab work, or who's not going to take that nutritional advice, or who's not bothered how much they run or top-up work that they need to be done? We've all had times where I know from a player's point of view, it's horrible to go and do top-up work when you're not in the squad, or you've been on the bench and you've sat on the bench for 90 minutes and you've done no work, and you're down in Dover away, and you've got like another 6-hour trip back home to get them to go and do some top-up work that's needed, because it's needed, especially with the high speed and sprint work with the acute chronic workload. It's really important for them to get that. So how do you deal with adversity of maybe a player that's been there, done it, has been in the championship, and he's now in the National League? How are you going to go and tell him that he's got to go and do 10 boxes? Like, that's dealing with the adversity. Yeah. when he's maybe got a bit of a strop on because he hasn't played. Do you know what I mean? So it's like dealing with that adversity. How, as a person, can you get them to go and do that work? So it's, for me, having that buy-in, being adaptable, and dealing with adversity, because you're not going to get everybody to to be all play happy families and be your best friend.
And then just
from a player's point of view, is that the
yeah,
next one?
yeah, I was just going to say from a player's point of view, but it'll be interesting tapping into your experience, obviously, as a player, but then reflecting now as a coach as well. Just on the players that you think have sort of either taken the step up, gone to the next level, like, is there any common traits that you see with those sorts of players that are willing to do extra and that you, as well as a coach now, probably enjoy working with, but also have a big impact working with them as well?
Yeah, I think, again, it's like the old saying, hard work beats talent. There's so many boys that are in the non-league environment that have so much talent. And honestly, it's scary how good these players are, but they just don't have that willingness to improve and be better. And that's not just tactically, that's obviously physically as well. Like, they could be seriously quick, but okay, let's get you quicker. They could be seriously strong and have a great physique. Right, okay, how can we improve that? But they kind of like don't want to know.
Yeah.
So I think the professionalism of a player and the hard work they put into the people who play in the Premier League, not only are they good footballers, but obviously from working with some, like doing some off-season stuff out in Dubai, the graft they put in is unbelievable, and the time they put into it, the dedication they put into it, whether that's foam rolling for 20 minutes, it's probably one of the most boring things in the world to do, but there's nothing wrong with foam rolling and watching your clips back from the game on a Saturday if you're at home. So if you're on a Sunday and we played a game on a Saturday and you're going to watch your clips back that the analyst has sent you, watch your clips back, foam roll, stretch, ice, whatever you need to do to prepare and get ready for it. I think that those guys who take that extra mile and that extra step in terms of looking after themselves is a real key thing to being a successful footballer, and probably in any sport really. I think that, I mean, I've worked privately with tennis players, golfers, rugby players, and they're all doing that extra stuff to become better. And I think there's the Ronaldo documentary itself is just that he's 24/7 footballer, and I think that's what you have to be. You can't just be that 90-minute footballer on a Saturday or a Tuesday evening or whatever time you're playing. You have to be. It's your job. It's not just a fun thing to do for some people. Some people it is. Some people not that bothered, but the ones who really go to the top, they are the most elite and the most professional.
Yeah, fully agree. Quality, mate. Some really, really good stuff in there. So I appreciate you coming on and giving up your time.
No problem.
I feel like that people will take a lot from it, but there might be some conversations or questions that they might want on certain things to maybe make it a bit more specific to them. So if people have got questions, have you got anywhere that you direct them to sort of drop you a message?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Twitter. And obviously I'm on LinkedIn. So Elliot Turner on LinkedIn and on Twitter. I don't know if you're going to put my handle up onto the.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
So I'm free to speak to anybody. I know I've actually got a call with Owen Jackson, who's asked a few questions. So I've answered a few questions, but he's asked me to have a bit of a Zoom call as well. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, and I mean, listen, I'm still only young in my role, so I know that people listening to it who have 20 more years experience than me, they're probably not going to ask a question as such. But even if I could ask them a question or whatever, or get networking like I try to do, if I can speak to those guys about a few things that, or say, for example, they've heard me speak and maybe impressed with a few things, maybe they could drop me a message as well, so can we have a chat or a catch up, and maybe I can pick their brains as well. But then again, like if any younger practitioners that are up and coming that want to dive into the non-league or try and start out after a university degree then or a master's, then just I'm free for a conversation. I'm always going to try and help because everybody needs help and everyone's there to learn it, mate. So I'm happy to answer anybody's questions.
Top class, mate. Well, like I say, thank you very much for coming on. Just stay on the line a sec while I say bye. But yeah, really appreciate your time.
No problem, mate. No problem.